Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Sandy Anderson, and I teach the Asian Modalities certification program at the Costa Rica School of Massage. And that involves traditional Chinese medicine as well as Shiatsu and also Thai massage. But what we're going to focus on today is one segment of traditional Chinese medicine, and that's going to be five-element theory. And the idea with five-element theory is that it's an ancient way of thinking about things, but it started off being ancient, but it's certainly directly relevant today. And the idea also is, we can use that as a tool for some self-exploration, for maybe understanding ourselves and other people a little bit better, interactions with other people, and also not just that, but maybe how we view our environment and what we see going on in our environment. So we're going to be talking about aspects of that. Alrighty, so I'm going to share my screen with you because I have, I have some slides I'd like to show you. So let me pull those up. And we can use those to talk about what we're going to be covering today. Okay. And alrighty. So the first thing I want to say is what we normally think of. I wanted to talk about what we normally think of when we hear five elements. And what I usually hear when I ask people about that is something related to like Ayurveda or something like that. I hear usually like maybe fire and water and air. And that's not the traditional five elements that we're going to be talking about. The five elements that we're going to be talking about have to do, the five are metal, water, earth, wood, and fire. And it's kind of interesting where they came from. So let me see if I can get the screen up. And, oh, waha! All righty. Let me know if any of you can't see that, but it should be a blue slide, and it should say five-element theory at the top. So five-element theory is part of traditional Chinese medicine, which goes back 5,000 years or more, and it developed out of natural phenomenon, because, of course, way back then, most people lived pretty close to the earth. Villages were pretty small. There might have been larger gatherings of people. Most people were agriculture based, and what that means is people were dependent on the seasons and the weather and whether plants can grow or not, whether animals will survive or not. So very, very close to earth and close to nature. So the ancient Chinese studied this, of course, because their lives depended on this, and they saw these cycles of transformation that occurred. So, of course, obviously winter flows into spring, spring flows into summer, summer flows into, well, late summer, that period just before harvesting begins in autumn. And then, of course, autumn flows into winter. So that's just a really obvious cycle that we're all familiar with. We're also, there's smaller cycles that we work with every day as well, just, a 24-hour cycle. There are times of day, there's when the sun is coming up and it's dawning, and then when the sun is directly overhead, it's noon, then we go into dusk, and then we go into, midnight, evening. So that's just a familiar cycle as well. So what the ancient Chinese did is took this natural information, took this idea of how everything is in a cycle, and categorized, for lack of a better term, categorized, organized, kind of arrayed everything within terms of cycles. And in particular, they came up with a 5-element cycle. It's also called the 5 phases or 5 transformations, 5-element theory, you know, a lot of different names, but it's basically a cycle because everything is related in some way to something else. So just as in life, as you know, there's very few absolutes, and even if there's an absolute, there's still always the possibility and the probability of change. For example, one of the most absolute things that I can think of is a mountain. You know, I mean, mountains are big, they are solid, they're rock. I mean, they are there. But think about where dirt comes from. Dirt comes from bigger particles being pounded into smaller particles. And those bigger particles came from small rocks. And those small rocks came from big rocks. And then if you get one giant big rock, you got a mountain. So even though a mountain may seem like it's an absolute, it is in fact undergoing a transformation. There's rocks sliding down it. They're becoming pulverized. That's what's making dirt. Okay. If we think about in terms of an absolute like death, which is, you know, the end of the natural progression of a person's life, then that in one sense is an absolute because, you know, death is finite. But if we think about what we do with the body of somebody who has passed on, we bury it, or we can cremate it. But either way, what we're going to do is return it back to the earth, and it'll become part of the earth again. So in that sense, it's continuing the cycle, of course, of life, and whatever nutrients were in the ashes, if the body was cremated, or if the body was buried, nutrients from the breakdown of the structures of the body feed the soil and then are going to feed plants that are living in the soil. And of course, those plants can feed us, they can feed animals. And then of course, we can eat animals. My apologies to the vegetarians. But you can kind of see that there's this interconnection among all living creatures, but not just living creatures, non-living structures as well, you know, like the soil. So that's the premise behind the 5-element theory, is we have this cycle that we are moving through. So another important concept associated with traditional Chinese medicine is one that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, and that's called qi, which is spelled Qi. And qi is a Chinese word meaning a lot of different things, but basically, if we sum it up in one sentence, it's the energy of the body. But it's not just the energy of the body, because we all have our own particular qi. We have our own particular vitality. But every living thing does as well. And because we have qi, it's not just contained within our bodies, it's actually 3-dimensional. It's within our bodies, but it comes out of our bodies and connects with every other living thing, the qi of every living thing in an environment. It's in fact what we're connecting with our clients when we are doing a bodywork session. So even though you maybe haven't studied any 5-element theory or any traditional Chinese medicine or any Asian bodywork, the fact is you're still working with it, you're just not calling it that. It's that connection you feel with a client. And it's also that space where your qi is supporting your client's qi, that therapeutic change is taking place. So that's our sense of qi. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, the focus is that the cause and progression of illnesses and disorders were perceived to be based on patterns of transformation within the 5-element theory. And that's something I go into a lot more detail in the Asian modalities program. So I'm not going to talk about that too much today. I want to talk more in terms of, for us on a personal level, and how we can use that information to maybe think about, what we're all going through right now in perhaps a little bit different way. Again, for it to be another tool for us to use. But 5-element theory, okay, so we have these 5 elements, and we're going to look at each of them in a little bit more detail. The Chinese use these to organize everything. So you name it, it's going to fit into one of the elements somewhere. So we're going to have a slide I'm going to show you with that. So it includes aspects of the body. Certain organs belong to a certain element. For instance, the heart and the small intestine belong to fire element. The liver and the gallbladder belong to wood element, things like that. Sense organs. The tongue belongs to fire element. The eyes belong to wood element, things like that. Tissues, emotions, and behavioral attributes. That's more what we're going to be talking about. So what traditional Chinese medicine practitioners do is use something called correspondences. So these are a reference that traditional Chinese medicine, that's what TCM stands for, physicians, when they diagnose and treat. And then by those of us who do certain Asian bodywork therapies, we can use these correspondences as well. And I'm going to show these to you because I want you to get an idea of what I meant by, boy, they organized everything. So let me take a look here. Okay, so 5-element theory correspondences. This is a snapshot. Of course, this whole class is a snapshot, but you get it. So these are our elements over on the left corner. So we have fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. So the organs that are associated with those are things like heart and small intestine, heart protector, triple heater, etc. We're not going to worry about those because that's a little bit too much detail. But if we take a look at things like seasons. So fire, the season associated with fire is summer. The season associated with earth is late summer. Just before harvesting, I was talking about that. With metal is autumn. With water is winter, and with wood is spring. So that's kind of interesting. Okay. Climate. So obviously summer, there's a lot of heat. So heat is associated with fire. Dampness is associated with earth. Dryness is associated with metal. Cold is associated with water. And wind is associated with wood. So right about now, you might be asking, well, I wonder which one I am. So I have a link on the next slide we're going to look at. There's a couple links, and the slide will be up long enough so you can write them down. But there's like little quizzes you can take to determine which of the elements are predominant in you. And the idea is there's certain behavioral and personality attributes associated with these elements as well. So again, this is a little bit more about, learning about yourself and how you respond to the world and make the decisions that you make. Now, all of us have all of 5 elements within us. We all do. Sometimes we might be more fiery. Sometimes we might be more in a metal mood. Sometimes we're feeling really watery, and I'm going to talk about what each of those mean in a few minutes. So the idea with these is one isn't better than the other, one isn't smarter, one isn't nicer. We have all of these elements, but there tends to be one that is a little bit more predominant, or maybe a lot more predominant in us. Although I have met people who are fairly evenly balanced in all 5 elements, and those are the most even-keeled people I've ever met. Nothing seems to upset them. They just seem to, be able to go along. But, again, we're all a little bit different. But a clue, and the reason I'm bringing this up now, we can use some of these correspondences to think about which element might be predominant. For instance, if you love heat, or if you really hate heat, it's an extreme in either direction, maybe fire is predominant in you. If you love dampness, it could be anywhere from like a real humid climate, or there's cold and dampness as well, kind of, you know, those of you in the Northeast and Northwest know what I mean about that. Then earth might be dominant. If you like a fairly dry climate, metal might be predominant. If you like cold, water might be predominant. And again, it's either extreme, if you really like cold or really hate cold. If you really like dryness or really hate dryness. Wind, if you really like wind, or if wind just drives you nuts, then wood might be predominant. And so just to let you know a little bit about myself, my wood is off the charts, and wind just drives me crazy. It just drives me crazy. I get really agitated when it's windy. And for a long time, I didn't know why until I studied 5-element theory. And it's like, oh, because I'm a wood. Wind rustles my leaves a little too much. You can tell I'm a wood. I even have a tree in the picture in the background. And green is one of my favorite colors. Oh, look at the colors. That's the next column over. So you can maybe take a look at the colors and see which ones you're drawn to. I happen to like green. I also happen to like blue a lot, but that satisfies the water in me. Again, we're going to talk about the correspondences, or what each of these mean. So you can kind of look at the colors. Sense organs. An example could be like somebody who has maybe problems with their eyes, then maybe they're wood. Like, you know, maybe their eyes water a lot, or maybe they're really subject to allergies and their eyes itch a lot, something like that. That could indicate wood. Or if somebody is maybe prone to mouth sores, then maybe that's fire. Okay. So now the function of each of these is pretty interesting. This is where we're getting more into, you know, kind of our attributes, kind of like who we are personally. So fire, emotional stability, assimilation, circulation, protection. So some of that's physiological, but some of that is fire people like connection with others. They like laughter. They like if you think of a lot of performers, I always think of like a flamenco dancer as being really fiery. So so if somebody doesn't have a lot of emotional stability, maybe their fire isn't in balance. That's an example. Okay, again, we're going to be talking more about this in just a minute. Earth has to do with digestion, nourishment, support. Earth people like to take care of those around them. They like their family around them. They want everybody to come to their house for Thanksgiving dinner, that sort of thing. Metal is good for sorting and organizing and knowing when to let go of things. You know, what to hang on to. There's like an evaluation process that goes on. It's like, should I keep this? Should I not? You know, things like that. And then actually having to do with respiration, that's because the lung channel and the lung organ is associated with metal. So that's why that's in there. So it's a physiological response. Water stores essence. Essence is like the very core of our being. It is that part we go to when we are absolutely alone, and our ability to think deeply about who we are. It's also kind of our artistic side, whatever art means to you. Okay. And then wood gathers ki. That's a Japanese way of spelling chi, for decisive action. Wood is about getting things done. It's about charging and going forward. Excuse me. Sorry. So if you look at each of these, you can probably see that each of these is within you. Again, we all have all of these. We just might have more of one than another. And then throughout our lives, we might change so that one is more predominant than another. Like if you're raising children, if you're in a phase where you're raising children, then earth might be more predominant. And then after the children leave, maybe water becomes more predominant. Or if you have children, but you're also working, you might be more earth at home, but maybe more metal at work, that sort of thing. So again, we all have all of these. The tissue, there's actual physical tissues associated with each of the elements. Emotions as well. So again, this taps into, kind of our personality or our emotional sense of ourselves. Joy is associated with fire. So fiery people, again, like a lot of laughter. They want, and again, this is a snapshot, they want to have a party and they want everybody at the party to have a great time. Okay. Earth is associated with pensiveness. That's thinking, sometimes overthinking, sometimes sitting there and chewing on a bone mentally. Okay. Then grief is associated with metal. So that sadness. So I was talking about in terms of different phases we might go through. If you've lost somebody you loved, you could be in a really metal phase with a lot of grief with that. So that would be like a normal response to that, even though you might not be predominantly metal in yourself. Fear is associated with water, and anger is associated with wood. So again, we all have all of these emotions. We're capable of each of these. Just kind of think about, especially when you're under stress, what do you automatically do when you're under stress? Some people, if they're fiery, are like, that's it, we're going to have a party. I need to blow off some steam. An earth person is like, no, just leave me alone. I need to think about this. I'm going to think about this. Metal, under stress, just might go to, oh no, what am I going to be losing here? This is so sad. I don't know, that sort of thing. Maybe go down that pathway. Water might be like, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I don't know. I'm going to maybe talk to everybody or talk to nobody. Again, extremes about this. I don't know what to do. And wood is like, alrighty, who do I need to send a sternly worded letter to about this? Okay, that kind of thing. So so think about your responses when you're under stress. And again, these can change throughout your life. Like maybe when, a certain situation came up, I was thinking like when somebody is younger and they got a flat tire. Oh no, what do we do now? So, but when you're 36 and you get a flat tire, maybe you don't go into that fear, possibly, if you went into fear when you were 19 and got a flat tire. Now you're maybe a little bit woody, like, oh, for heaven's sakes, this had to happen now. But you know how to take care of it. So, you kind of change. And then taste. Taste is pretty cool. Think about the foods, your go-to foods when you're under stress. Fire people tend to like bitter things. Think dark coffee, think bitter chocolate. Earth, sweet. Oh, yeah. All the baked goods in the world. Okay, under stress. Metal, pungent. Like a nice gorgonzola or blue cheese. But maybe some garlic. Water, salty. Pretzels, chips, you name it. Wood, sour. Again, I'm mainly a wood. I have shelves of pickles in my fridge because I really like pickles because I'm a wood. So that's just something to think about. Okay, so actually, oops, let me go back. Okay. So these are the quizzes I was talking. Well, the first one is a quiz. So if you want to take an hour and a half to write that link down, my apologies. This is, by quiz I mean it's just a series of questions. And it asks, you know, about how you think about things, how you feel about things, how you respond to things. And just, you know, answer it honestly. So you can look at that and determine if a particular element is more predominant in you. So that's what that's designed to do. And then the second link actually corresponds more with personality types. So if somebody is mainly water or wood or fire or earth or metal. So again, these are snapshots. So, you know, since we don't have like, you know, hours of time or days of time. So we're just kind of going through, you know, to get a quick view of this. And again, we all have all of these within ourselves. Hey, so water people tend to be things like artists and philosophers, deep thinkers. This is, they like to be solitary. They can go with the flow, but sometimes they can get lost in details of life. Or they can get lost in life and they can become overwhelmed by details. So somebody who's mainly a water person may look like they have trouble making up their minds. And they just kind of like seem to drift from one thing to another. Again, we all have all of these within ourselves. The water part of ourselves could be like that. We might be in a water phase where, you know, I just don't feel like making any decisions today, so I'm not going to. Or it's a time where you want to focus on your art. And art can be lots of different things, of course. It can be music, it can be writing, it can be painting, it can be fiber crafts, it can be gardening, things like that. Although gardening tends to be closer to earth, but it's just something where you are getting in touch with that expressive side of yourself. It's also solitary. It's that part of you that needs to be alone. And even the most extroverted, fiery person on the planet needs at least a little bit of alone time now and then. Of course, if somebody's introverted, perhaps they might have a bigger water side to them and need to be alone a little bit more. Wood is very action-oriented. Athletes, triathletes, CEOs, the all-go, no-quit people are wood. So they're fearless, they're direct, they think for themselves, they don't back down. They may not start a fight, but they're sure going to finish it. Of course, some of the downside of that is they may be pushy, may be very pushy, and they can sometimes frighten other people or seem like they're not listening or they're not willing to listen to what somebody else has to say. But this is the part of us that's like, you know what? I want to go to school, and I want to go to school in Costa Rica, so it's the wood part of you that made it happen. Okay. Fiery people, performers, dancers, they're very charismatic. People are drawn to them. They're lively. They love to laugh and engage with others. Downside is they may have superficial relationships. So if you kind of think of the, you know, the life of the party, but maybe not, you know, getting to the level of depth that a water would might not be comfortable for a fire. So that's something to think about. Fire can really easily rage out of control. Fire people tend to, when they want to blow off steam, they want to have a party, or they want to go out and dance, maybe drink. You think about all those Hollywood stars, enormously talented and charismatic, And how many of them have had issues with alcohol or drug abuse? Because their fire was raging out of control and they didn't know how else to manage that. And when we talk about how the elements interact with each other, we'll talk more about that. Because there's another way to think about managing that. Earth people, or the earth part of ourselves, tend to be nurturers, gardeners, organizers of potlucks. So it's kind of interesting when there are classes at CRSMT. I teach anatomy and physiology there, and I would, first day of class, I always try to get an idea of how many of each of these elements we have in a class. Like, is it half fire and half water? Okay, then we're going to have some steam, because the fires aren't going to understand the waters, and the waters aren't going to understand the fires unless they make, unless they make an effort to do that. Okay, but earths, and so when we have classes do that, and we find out who the earths are, I always say, those are the ones you want in charge of potlucks, because they know about food. And invariably, the earth people are the ones who like to cook and to bake. Okay, they do genuinely care for others. They tend to love children or animals, but the drawback is they may not be able to separate themselves from those they care for. Oop, little typo there, my apologies. So by that I mean here, let me help you, when you don't want help and you don't need help. Or what do you mean you're not coming home for Christmas? Everybody comes, that kind of thing. They want the big gathering, the family around them for the holidays, kind of thing. Metal people tend to be accountants, professional organizers. They like information, they like data, they like filling in rows on a spreadsheet. Metal people will have spreadsheets of their spreadsheets. Okay. They need to plan and organize. But the drawback may be they seem to be aloof and detached. Okay, so that's something to think about. Okay, so again, we have all of these within us. It's just, which one is more predominant with that. And then also, by understanding these different elements, it might make sense when we have difficulty understanding where somebody else is coming from. And it could be, I'm a wood, so if I come across a water person, if I didn't have this awareness, water people may drive me nuts, because I'm like, well, just do something. What do why are you just sitting there thinking? You got to do something. And it's like, they are doing something. They're doing a water thing because they're water. Okay? Whereas if I wanted to, do a nice, hefty, hike in the woods, the earth might be really interested in that, being close to the earth, but they may not be interested in this kind of forced march up a hill that a wood would love to do. Doesn't mean earth is lazy or that earth doesn't want to get in shape. It just means that earth would rather do something, do it in a different way that makes more sense to them. So that's what I was talking about, is one isn't smarter than the other or better or this or that. It's just like, oh, okay, so-and-so is a such and such. Now I understand why he or she is out in that garden every single day. That would drive me nuts. Okay, but it doesn't. That's what they need. So that's what the idea with that is. Okay. So now I want to talk about how these elements support each other. So again, going back to the cycle idea. So we have all of these within ourselves, okay? But these are also within our immediate environment. They are also within the world environment. And then they also can be used to think about epochs of time, periods of time as well. For instance, up until we all went on lockdown or quarantine, okay, if we talk about, and again, I hate to say typical, but if we talk about typical American culture, it's very wood. It's very go, go, go. You have to get. You need this, you need that. When you take a vacation, you have to cram it full of 400 different activities. You can't just sit there and read a book. It's pretty much a go, go, go thing. So that's a wood phase. Okay. Or kind of a wood way to think of typical American culture. So that's kind of come to a halt right now. And if you think about, in general, and I'm not saying everybody's feeling this way, people are not really knowing what to do because we haven't been like this in a phase like this before. I mean, if you think about when the country was founded until now, like over 250 years ago, I mean, the country was founded on and by wood people saying, you know, we've had enough. You just shut up, King George. This is what we're doing. We're making a new country. Very wood thing to do. Okay. So now that wood phase kind of coming to a, you know, on a pause, coming to a close. And what phase are we in? Well, that's a really good question. And I'm guessing for everybody, it's been a little bit different. And it's not about, well, I should be doing this, or I'm bad because I'm feeling this, or, well, I know that I should do this instead. It's like, whoa, well, this is pretty much where we are right now. So let's take a look. So we're going to take a look at each of these elements. And then what we're going to do is, what I'm going to do is talk about the moving through the elements a little bit more to kind of help make sense maybe of our worlds right now. So metal, so these elements are always in this particular order. So if you see something called a generation cycle or a nurturing cycle, you're always going to see the elements in this particular order. There might be a different one up top, like maybe fire is at top or something, but always following fire will be earth, and always following earth will be metal, and always following metal will be water, and always following water will be wood. Okay, because this is the order in which they occur. Okay, so if we think about it, okay, actually, let's start down at the bottom with wood, because this one's really obvious. If we think about natural phenomenon, then wood, with the generation cycle, actually, let me back up a little bit. With the generation cycle, what this means is a particular element is going to nourish or generate or support the element that comes after it. So wood supports fire. Fire supports earth. Earth supports metal. Metal supports water. Water supports wood. So let's talk about natural phenomenon, starting with wood because, again, it's easiest. How does wood support fire? Well, pretty obvious. Wood is a fuel for fire. So if you have enough wood, you can build a fire. You can generate fire with wood. Okay, fire supports earth. So the ashes from the fire go into the earth and nourish and support it. And from there, new things are going to be able to grow because the ashes help kind of contributed to the nutrients in the earth. Earth supports metal. Metals are found in the earth's crust. It forms in the crust. So earth kind of houses or generates metals. Metals support water. So metals from the earth's crust leach into water supplies, and that's where a lot of electrolytes come from. Electrolytes are actually, if those of you who remember your AMP, are charged particles. The vast majority of them are actually metals. Sodium's a metal. Most of them are metals. And they go into the water supply and they become like electrolytes. And then water obviously supports wood, because if you water plants, wood, trees, any plants, they're going to grow. So that was the natural phenomenon that the ancient Chinese saw. And then from there, they extrapolated it to mean so many different things. But if we think about it in terms of ourselves, take a look at fire. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. Okay. So what that means is, if we, okay, so again, we all have all parts of these within us. Again, one may be more predominant than the other. The fire part of us, let's start with that one. The fire part of us is engaging and connecting with others. That takes a lot of energy to do that. Some people get a lot of energy out of doing that, you know, especially people who are extroverted, but it takes a lot of energy to do that. If you think about that, again, I go back to the analogy of, oh, let's have a party, or maybe out someplace where there's a lot of people. I know, try to remember back when that happened. And, you know, all this connection and people talking to people and moving around and all of that, that takes a lot of energy. You need fuel. The fuel for your fire comes from your wood. So your impetus for action within you comes from your wood. Then fire is going to support earth. So fire is going to support your earth in that sense of connection. So earth is about nurturing others. Fire gives you that capability of being able to connect with others and bring others together. It just may not look like a big noisy party, but it is about that connection and bringing people together. And then your earth is going to support your metal. So your earth is your nourishment. It's your foundation. Think about your home. It's where you should feel safest. And then that gives you the ability, when you feel safe, to sort and organize and determine what is important for you to keep and what is important for you to let go of. Because, you know, we all have I think about the mail that comes into your house, just the mail alone. Not all of it's going to stay in your house. Your house is your stability, your sanctuary, where you nourish yourself. You get to choose what stays within there and what you need to let go of. Same with people. You get to choose who you can have in your life, who you can have in your home, and who needs to no longer be there. Then your metal supports your water. If you didn't have a water, again, is your alone time. So the metal gives you that structure or framework in which you can have time to do your art and go within. So if you didn't have that, water would just kind of spread all over the place. Okay, so you get a structure and you get a framework. You know what's useful, what's not useful. That's a major part of the artistic process, is, of course, you know, doing the art. And without, you know, sometimes it depends. Everybody has a different artistic process. Some people need to do a lot of things, and then they'll sort out later what they're going to keep and what's going to be let go of. And some people are like, no, I want to do it this way to begin with. And so their sorting and organizing occurs during the process. But it gives you that framework to do that. And then if you get enough time alone for self-reflection with water, you'll be able to have the impetus you need for wood. You'll be able to feed your wood so that you can get out there and do things. So if we think about, if we're going back to, okay, so that's within an individual person, having all these different elements. Think about how you can extrapolate this to different cultures and different societies and different experiences that you've had. Okay, so. Okay, for instance, I think all of you went to school at the Costa Rica school, massage therapy. For the vast majority of people, it's a whole new experience, whole new culture. And so they went with someplace that was very comfortable into perhaps something that took a little bit of getting used to. So the earth people then would be, okay, I'm going to find all the stores that sell food first so that I can nourish myself, so that I know where to nourish myself. The metal people might have been like, okay, I need a notebook for each class. I need a separate pen for each notebook. Let me set up the spreadsheets for each class. I'm going to put the syllabus in this order so that so you see what I mean by sorting and organizing. Some of the water people, I'm guessing they barely had thrown their suitcases down before they were headed out to the beach, into the ocean. Because the water people need to be in the water. The wood people would have been like, all righty, we're going to do a nice workout today because we're going to get up early tomorrow, make sure we're the first ones in class, and I'm going to get the seat that I want. Okay? And you know what? And we better start on time because I'm a wood and I like to start on time. Fire people, I'm pretty sure, even if they were on a shuttle with other students coming down from the airport to the school, were already chatting with everybody, seeing who they would want to hang out with, seeing who might be a good connection with. Some of them, and I'm not saying all of them, some of them might have been like, wow, there's a lot of bars in this town. We are going to have some fun here. Or on the other hand, they could be really fiery in connecting and setting up study groups because they like study groups. Water people would be like, I'd rather just study alone. It's too distracting. Fire people, if they're not with other people, then they can't focus, that kind of thing. So that's one example. And then another example, okay, if we go back to what I was talking about with American culture, and it's not our culture, our culture is still there, maybe American way of life right now, very woody, has been shut down. You're starting to see some pockets of fire flaring up. You're seeing protesting, people gathering in groups, connecting with groups, connecting on Facebook and making a plan, and we're going to show them. So pockets of fire and protest are showing up. Or some people might have been going into an earth phase. What I did when I heard or just had the sense that Arizona was probably going to go into lockdown mode, I went out and I bought all kinds of food and I made pot roast and lasagna and baked salmon and ribs and beans and greens, and my freezer was stuffed full. Because I'm a wood person, but it was my earth that really needed to feel secure. It's like, I have enough food. I'm going to be okay. The metal people might be responding with, well, I need information. And they have 16 tabs open on their laptops every day, checking this story and that update, and look at these statistics, and following this map of how the virus is traveling, that sort of thing. They want information. And they're sorting and organizing the information. Some of it's useful, some of it's not. And the water people, these are the ones that might have gone, gone to ground. They are the ones that maybe, on the one hand, they want to be by themselves, and they've been painting or writing or reading, and they just feel that's what makes them feel best. That's how they're going to relieve stress with this. On the other hand, they may be, since it can be an extreme of either way, they may have been to the point of going a little stir crazy. Like the fire people can go a little stir crazy because they've been alone too long. So we are almost out of time. But again, this is what I meant by a snapshot of, or just kind of an introduction of what these different elements are and how they correspond to each part of ourselves. So the idea is to think about each of these, think about what might be most predominant in you, and think about your responses to things. And then think about responses that you've noticed other people having, and seeing if you can put them in, or I want to say put them in these categories because that sounds very metally. My second highest is metal, so you have to watch it there. But think about in a different way, instead of, oh, they're driving me nuts, I can't believe they're doing X, Y, and Z. Instead, it's like, oh, that's why they're doing X, Y, and Z, because maybe that their fire is what's really needing to be satisfied right now. Or, I can't believe she's alone in her room again. Well, maybe that's what she needs. And then also think about what's happening. You can also think about other instances of interactions or experiences you've had, and how those might correspond to the different elements with those as well. Okay, which one? Oh, here's a question. Which one is wine? From Cherie. Cherie? Yes, they all are. Okay, so the fire people might like something like a real bitter Syrah, whereas water people might like a nice light Chardonnay. Okay, just kidding. And then how would you, another question, how would you relate these to the lion, owl, puppy, and turtle? And for those of you who don't know, that's different communication styles that we went through with the class. Lion is a wood, owl is metal, puppy is fire, turtle is water, and earth is kind of a stabilizer among all of them. With that. Okay. And Bill, here's a question. Will they be able to access the slides after this class? Because I'm not sure how to do that. So maybe have Bill answer that. And I see we are at 5 o'clock, my time. So I see that the hour is up. Does anybody have any other questions before we finish? Oh, Bill said he can share them, so that would be good. Okay. So this was really fun. I hope you guys got something useful out of this. You know, it's hard to condense 5,000 years into, you know, an hour, but hey, that's what we do. That's how we roll. Yeah, if there's any other questions, you can contact me through Bill. If you haven't taken the Asian modalities class, again, we talked about it in a lot more detail, but just, you know, it's food for thought, just another way of thinking. All righty. So thank you, everyone. This was a lot of fun. I hope you had a good time with this. All righty. So if there are no other questions, I think we can finish. Does that sound good? All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.